Hello, my name is Katerina Juklova. I am a teacher educator from the University Hradec Kralove in the Czech Republic, and today I'm gonna to share with you results of our empirical study on learner autonomy. By learner autonomy, life in postmodern society brings many challenges. The absence of social control mechanism, availability, multiple choices, uncertainty, and the risk of free decision making forces us permanently to search for our identity, to autonomously manage our lives, and to spend the whole day learning. Learner autonomy has thus become one of the priorities of today's education. It has actually become a vital concept of theoretical research of human growth, development, well-being, motivation, and also the part of many theories of learning and motivation. Um, However, despite the long-term academics and practitioners' interests, its enhancement and effective support remains still a challenge. For example, the Czech Republic belongs to countries whose educational system is not very successful in supporting learner autonomy. Deeper analysis of this state is therefore needed so that we could do better. The aims of our study therefore were first to identify characteristics of learner autonomy from the theory, second, to explore the overall levels of these characteristics among Czech future teachers, third, to explore mutual relationships among these key characteristics, and finally, fourth, to explore the degree of inter-individual differences so that we will be able to make suggestions for the differentiated support of learner autonomy among Czech future teachers. To identify key characteristics of a learner autonomy, which was the first of our aims, we might review and find out that learner autonomy is a concept which is a part of plenty of theories. For example, self-determination theory describes learner autonomy as a consequence of specific educational situation characterized by the ability of a teacher and a learner to allow one's motivation to come from internal volitional sources like intrinsic motivation or identified regulation as opposed to external non-volitional regulation. The theory of self-regulated learning characterizes learner autonomy as a summary of attributes enabling self-regulated learning. Autonomous learners thus able metacognitively, motivationally, and behaviorally engage in achieving task-specific learning objectives and adapt their learning strategies as needed. Both of those theories put the stress on contextually embeddedness of this phenomenon rather than it to be a static learner trait. Unfortunately, we found they pay quite a little attention to developmental questions and to a broader educational context. We found the lacking elements in the field of theories of epistemic development. The theories of epistemic development concentrate on ways of creating meaning and ways of relating to authorities, oneself, and other sources during cognition. Learner autonomy can be described as a specific developmental position called contextual relativism or evaluativism, which is characterized by the ability of students to break away from authorities and to accept uncertainty in knowing, as well as the ability to develop own tools to construct and evaluate knowledge based on evaluating evidence in the relation to the context. This pretty matured position is preceded by two less matured positions, absolutism or dualism, characterized by reliance on authorities and following external rules, and a bit more mature is multiplicism, which is characterized by students' recognition of the possibility of existence of multiple truths, but there recognition that those truths are not able to be evaluated. To measure learner autonomy among Czech university students, we used self-authorship model by King and Baxter Magoda, which is the model from the field of epistemic developmental theories. And this model describes learner autonomy as a result of development of three dimensions. First, interpersonal dimension. Stress the importance of putting self in the center of knowing so that ourself could coordinate and direct our knowing according to our values, beliefs, convictions, generalization, and so on. The other thing that leads to learner autonomy is the development in the dimension of cognition and metacognition, which means that one has to develop special and useful studying strategies so that to be able to evaluate and construct his or her knowledge autonomously. Last but not least, interpersonal dimension of learner autonomy from the perspective of self-authorship model says that one has to become more dependent on authority. And the way to become more dependent, less dependent, the way to become less dependent is to participate more actively in co-construction of meaning. Meaning, participate in collaboration with peers and with other people, not just authority. We use this model to read our measurement of learner autonomy of Czech future teachers. To cover the first dimension of interpersonal development, we used several scales of motivated strategies learning questionnaire, in particular intrinsic goal orientation, extrinsic goal orientation, task value scale, control of learning beliefs, self-efficacy for learning, and performance and text anxiety scale. To cover the dimension of cognition and metacognition, we also use several scales of the mentioned questionnaire, in particular rehearsal, elaboration, organization, critical thinking, and metacognitive self-regulation. And finally, to cover the interpersonal dimension, we use two scales of MSLQ questionnaire, in particular peer learning and help seeking. Our explorative study of learner autonomy of Czech future teachers had altogether 129 participants who were full-time first-year students of master teaching program of medium-sized public university, University of Hradec Kralove in the Czech Republic, whose average age was 23.5 years. We carried out several analyses to confirm the validity and reliability of used scales, used measures. We used explorative factor analysis, confirmative factor analysis, and also we calculated Cronbach alpha coefficients for each scale. To explore values of each single scales, we used descriptive statistics such as we calculated mean values and standard deviation as well as some others. To explore the mutual relationships of each of our identified key characteristics of learner autonomy, we used correlational analysis and exploratory factor analysis. And finally, to explore the scope of interpersonal differences, we use cluster analysis, in particular K-means type. And what did we find out? First picture shows us mean values on single scales. As we can see, the picture uses three colors to distinguish between the scales of cognitive, interpersonal, and interpersonal dimensions. We can also see that mean values on each scales in majority lie in the area above average, while there are three scales that are on which our students scored lower. The three scales are critical thinking, extrinsic goal orientation, and peer learning. This is the great one. These findings are not quite surprising, as they are in line with findings of previous studies about Czech future teachers. It was among them there was a finding that Czech future teachers are quite low in critical thinking, as well as they use quite seldom peer learning, which might be which might be due to cultural reasons. As well, quite a lower extrinsic goal orientation can be viewed as a positive message of positive trends in learning of Czech future teachers, meaning that they are ready to put themselves in the center of their knowing so that it could coordinate their knowing and direct it. The table shows mutual correlations on single scales. We can see that the majority of the values are highly correlations, which are very significant, except for several of them. From the dimension of cognition and metacognition, we can see that such an exception is the scale rehearsal, which is not connected to the scale of elaborations and the scale of neither to scale of critical thinking, which are viewed as the scales of quality learning. As for the scales of intrapersonal dimension, we can also see that most of them are correlated significantly, highly significantly to each other, except for the scale of rehearsal, as well as to the scale of extrinsic goal orientation. We can also see that the relations of the scale of intrinsic goal orientation to scales of other scales of this dimension are much stronger than the relations of the scale of extrinsic goal orientations. As for the scales of interpersonal dimensions, those are the last two scales, pure learning and help seeking. You can also see again quite a high correlations, except for the correlations with the scales of control beliefs and the scale of task value, meaning that students do not connect help seeking or peer learning with the control of their beliefs or with the value of the task. This picture shows the results of cluster analysis carried in our study. It identified three types or three clusters of students according to the values on each scale. The first cluster of students was named actively reproductive. Those students are characterized by high activity and they equally rely on higher and lower strategies of learning, which means they use quite often critical thinking, elaboration, as well as rehearsal strategy. They are also quite anxious. The second type of student was named actively elaborative, and this type of students is quite high in using high quality learning strategies and doesn't rely on lower quality strategies. Their test anxiety is not that high of the first cluster. Students of the third cluster, named passively reproductive, are very low in motivation to found their own perspective and in confidence in their own abilities. That's why they relied on low quality strategies and are quite anxious as well. Conclusions. At the overall level, we could see the readiness of students, the readiness of Czech future teachers to look for their own personal perspective and meaning. However, they are not yet completely successful. This means that they lack high quality learning strategies and use mostly reproductive learning strategies such as memorization. We also could see from the correlational analysis and from the explorative factor analysis a non-differentiated approach of Czech future teachers to choosing strategies and insufficient awareness of utilization of higher quality methods. What we also could see was that Czech future teachers do not usually relate their study success and their control of the learning to that of their peers, which also confirms the dominant orientation toward their teacher's authority. As for the differentiated perspective on future teachers' learner autonomy, we used cluster analysis that identified three types of students that can be viewed as different positions in development of learner autonomy, and as well as they could benefit from different support of learning environment. As for the passively reproductive type of student, that can be viewed as less developed or less matured in terms of learner autonomy. This type of student lacks self-efficacy for own learning and also intrinsic motivation as well as strategies. So this type of student may benefit from supporting his confidence in abilities that can be done by assigning manageable tasks of appropriate difficulty, including group work, providing formative feedback, or situating the learning within students' experience. Also, more peer learning and metacognitive reflection, as well as task-provoking, higher order thinking may be beneficial. As for the second type of student, named actively productive type, this type of student has confidence of his own abilities, but lacks strategies. So more strategies of quality learning are needed to be developed. For example, by inclusion of new forms and methods of learning like refutational text, dilemmas, and problem solving as well. And as for the third type of student named actively elaborative type, which can be viewed as the most developed student in terms of learner autonomy. Those students already have beliefs in their abilities as well as they rely on higher quality learning strategies. So those students need more space, even more space for their own initiative, which can be done by giving possibility of choice, by making their instruction individualized, together with learning environment that encourages their further development and development of their potential. And that is all from us. Thank you for your attention, and we are looking to your questions.